Here's a headline you might have seen about a week ago. Now, the minimum wage might not sound like a concept that needs much explaining. It's just the lowest amount you can get paid, right? But the reality is a little more complicated than that. For example, here's something that you might not know. Australia actually doesn't have just one minimum wage, it's got hundreds of them. And even if you're not on one of those minimum wages, decisions made by the government make a really big difference to how much you get paid. We care a lot about wages, and we're talking about them a lot in the context of the cost of living crisis, but what we don't often do is take a step back and ask how our wages are set and why they're the level that they are. Today, I want to take a closer look. If you have a job in Australia, your wage will have been set by one of two systems: the awards system and the agreements system. The awards system is a set of minimum wages for different types of work decided by the government. And it used to be that awards were pretty much the entire system. Most workers in most fields had their wages determined by a government tribunal. But today, awards cover only 1 in 5 workers. And that's because the system has moved in the last few decades towards agreements. Agreements are struck between an employer and employees, and the idea is that that approach is supposed to be tailored better to individual needs. Although, as we'll see, it's a little bit more complicated. For now, you've just got to focus on the 2 buckets. 1 in 5 people are on awards, and 4 in 5 people are on agreements. And which bucket you're in makes a big difference to how much you get paid. Let's take them one at a time, starting with the award system. The award system, again, is a system of minimum wages set by the government. But when I say it's set by the government, I don't mean it's set by politicians. It's set by an independent government body called the Fair Work Commission. And the Fair Work Commission goes into a fair bit of detail when it sets an award. For example, when the Fair Work Commission sets the award for nurses, it's not just one number. There's a different wage level for nurses of different levels of experience. There's an overtime rate, there's a night shift rate. If you're a journalist on an award, you can even get your glasses paid for. The Fair Work Commission can review an award at any time, but it updates them all together once a year. When the Fair Work Commission announced a 5.75% increase to minimum wages, that applies to everyone in the award system, all 2 or 3 million. So who is on an award? Well, it varies, but most people are in 3 industries: retail, hospitality, and care. They're more likely to be women, they're more likely to be younger, and they're more likely to be lower paid. Now let's turn to agreements, which are struck between an employer and employees, either as an individual employee or as a collective, often represented by a union. Now, these are done by negotiation, but the negotiations are not a free-for-all. There's a strict set of rules that governs how the agreements can be finalised. And the Fair Work Commission in this case plays the role of an umpire enforcing those rules. This can be a drawn-out and complicated process, which is one reason why a lot of small businesses prefer to use the awards rather than try for agreements. And the rules are hotly contested. It's one of the major sources of disagreement between union groups and business groups. There's just one rule that I think is important to highlight, and that is called the Better Off Overall test. Every agreement, in order to be approved, has to make sure that all workers are better off than they would be under the relevant award. That's one reason why employees on agreements tend to be a lot higher paid than employees on awards. The average employee on an agreement earns about $1,500 a week before tax. The average employee on an award, $849. There are some other reasons for this as well, including the fact that a lot of people who are covered by awards tend to be in entry-level jobs in sectors like retail and hospitality. Still, it's an interesting thing to note. You may not have realised that 1 in 5 workers, millions of people, some of the lowest paid workers in our society, have their wages set by an independent government body. The Fair Work Commission doesn't get as much attention as the Reserve Bank of Australia when it makes its decisions on interest rates. But the implications of what the Fair Work Commission does for cost of living and the standard of living of people in low-paid jobs can be just as significant. So what has this system delivered for award workers? It's a mixed picture. Firstly, Australia's minimum wage is fairly high by international standards. The US minimum wage, for example, is less than half the size of ours. And in every year since 2014, the Fair Work Commission has increased award wages faster than the wages of everybody else in the economy. But before 2014, it was a different story. Since the 1990s, people on award wages have fallen gradually behind relative to other wage earners. So to recap, you're either on an award or an agreement. People on agreements tend to be paid more, and awards can be thought of as minimum wages for different types of work. But there's something worth acknowledging at this point, and that's that there are a lot of people who don't even get paid those minimum award amounts. That's illegal. It's a practice that's normally called wage theft. But it does happen. The federal government discovered $500 million worth of unpaid wages in the last financial year, but there are some suggestions that that's just the tip of the iceberg. Figures from the Australian Bureau of Statistics suggest that as many as 1 in 11 workers get paid below what should, by law, be the minimum wage. Workers in their 20s are 6 times more likely than workers in their 30s to be underpaid. So what's the takeaway from all of this? Well, we talk about wages a lot, and often when we do it, we'll focus on one number. Wages have grown by 3%, for example. But if you're interested in wages, looking behind these numbers to the awards and the agreement systems can give you a bit more nuance and help you to understand where your wage fits in. If you're on an agreement, the debates between politicians, unions, and business groups about the rules of that agreement make a big difference to how much you're going to get paid. And if you're on an award, the annual decision of the Fair Work Commission has a huge impact on your standard of living. If you're curious, you can take a closer look. The Fair Work Commission's website can help you to figure out whether you're covered by an award or an agreement, and give you the tools to understand a whole lot more about how your wage is set.